Ladies and gentlemen, I am Bernie Says, and today I'm here to read a fanfic, because I'm Bernie and it's what we do. Ching. And today I'm reading The Many Secret Origins of Scootaloo, which I'm going to read the entirety of, all with my own magical voice. Which means that some of the voice is going to sound terrible. And it'll be a laugh, so why the hell not? And this is a fanfic by Defender a certain amount of twos. 1, 2, 4, Defender 2222. Who does very good stories. So, after this, because I might do the sort of sequel God Squad, but I don't know. It depends if I can be bothered, because, GCSEs and stuff. So let us begin with Chapter 1, The Cakes. It was a sight so rare that those that saw it could only stop and gawk. It was like finding a field of four-leaf clovers. Cupcakes and donuts, and all manner of sweets were forgotten, as the patrons at Sugar Cube Corner sat slack-jawed at the scene playing out before them. The Cutie Mark Crusaders, sitting at a table, enjoying a treat. No, that wasn't the amazing part. This was actually quite common. Applejack or Rarity, or even on occasion Fluttershy, were always taking the girls to the pastry shop. It was the fact that the CNCs were sitting calmly at the table, nibbling on their treats and talking about their day at school. And nothing had exploded. Twilight Sparkle considered for a moment that it was rather mean-spirited to find the little fillies behaving properly to be such a world-shaking event. They were good girls, after all, always meaning to do well. Yes, some of their quests to discover their special talents tended to end in destruction, mayhem, property damage, and the release of ancient evils, and that had only happened once if somebody didn't count last week when they had summoned that winged squid creature trying to be Cutie Mark witches, but they meant well. They just wanted their cutie marks and, like all fillies, were going about it the wrong way. Twilight smiled to herself, remembering her own cutie mark quest, including an attempt to use her brother as a sled dog that hadn't gone over too well. Luckily for Twilight, and Shining Armor, she had become enamored with magic shortly thereafter, and all her efforts had gone into learning magic, leaving little time for daredevil acts. She just hoped the girls would find their passion soon, and realized that getting a cutie mark was more about embracing something within you, than discovering something new. It was clear that Rarity and Applejack weren't going to question this lucky break. The two mares were happily chatting with each other, whilst the fillies giggled to themselves over something that had happened in Miss Shirley's class. Twilight's friends would occasionally look down to make sure the girls were still behaving themselves, but, for once, the CMCs were allowing their big sisters to actually enjoy their meal. "So beautiful, isn't it?" Miss Cake said, trotting over to give Twilight another cup of tea. "And also tragic." "Beautifully tragic. Tragically beautiful." Twilight looked back and forth at the two bakers, her brows screwed up in utter confusion. "I'm sorry, but what are you talking about?" "The tragical scene over there," Miss Cake said, pointing towards the Cutie Mark Crusaders. Yes, the tragiful," Mr. Cake stated in agreement, a smile on his face, as he and his wife finally came over to a consensus. I'm still not following you." Twilight was beginning to wonder if the cakes hadn't been cursed into being in an endless loop of gibberish. "I mean, it's just Applejack and Rarity having a snack with their sisters." Their sisters in Scootaloo," Mr. Cake said sagely, as if the sentence was the lost wisdom of Starswell the Bearded. But when he saw that Twilight still wasn't following, he leaned in closer, inspecting her with a critical eye. "You don't know, do you?" "Know what?" Twilight was beginning to feel utterly exasperated, and cursed her sweet tooth for dragging her into Sugar Cube Corner. She knew she should have just headed home to have some fruit, but no! She had a craving for brownies, and now she was going to pay for it! "About Scootaloo," Miss Cake hissed. "Twilight, don't tell me you don't know about her past." "What past?" Twilight said dumbly. It was as if she had walked into a play that had started an hour ago, and was trying to play catch-up even as the scene continued. "You know, her past," Miss Cake whispered, giving her quick glance towards the orange Pegasus that was currently trying to lick frosting from the tip of her nose. "Her beautiful past. But also—" "I get it!" Twilight snapped, cutting Mr. Cake off. "It's beautiful and tragic and maybe even a bit melancholy." "No one said anything about it being melancholy." Mr. Cake glanced over at his wife, who nodded in agreement. That's just silly, Twilight. Why would you think that? Twilight tilted her head, internally debating if it would be a wise idea to bash her head against the table until she suffered enough brain damage to make the conversation make sense. However, her level-headedness prevailed, and Twilight, with as much calm she could muster, forced a smile on her face. Why don't you tell me about Scootaloo's tragicful past? Miss Cake looked around as if she suddenly feared the spies would burst out from under the tables and arrest her for spilling the beans. Well, I'm not one to gossip. Twilight closed her eyes to prevent the Cakes from seeing her over-the-top eye roll. Miss Cake was one of the biggest gossips in town. Heck, Twilight knew for a fact that even after they'd been featured, the Cakes were still disappointed that there would be no more Gabby Gums articles. Twilight, are you okay? Just fine. Please just tell the story. And Twilight ground out. Well, if you exist, Miss Cake said pleasantly. It all started about 6 years ago. 6 years ago. Now be sure to keep an eye out on that farm while you're gone, alright, young missy? Applejack smiled, trotting over to Granny Smith and giving her a nod. Don't worry, Sweet Apple Acres is in good hooves. I don't want either of you to worry about me while you two are off enjoying the big city. Granny Smith let out a huff of annoyance at the young mare's jest. Ain't no vacation, Applejack. We're just going to get a new plow. Yup, Miss Big Macintosh said. Applejack smiled, walking over and giving her big brother a hug as well. That don't mean you can't enjoy yourself. Don't go rushing back thinking you have to come bail me out. We got another 3 weeks until Applebuck and Sugar Cubes, so I figure I'll manage just fine if you two decide to take in a show or do a little sightseeing in Manhattan. Granny grumbled something about big cities and all the traffic as she got into the wagon Big Mac hooked up to. The massive stallion gave his sister one final look before he began to trot off, the wagon rumbling as it pulled away from the house and down the dirt driveway towards the main road. I'll see you in a few days, Applejack called out, waving her hooves frantically. Have fun. I'm sorry, but what does Applejack's family buying a plow have to do with Scootaloo? I'm getting to that, Twilight. The friendly grin Applejack had been wearing fell from her face the moment her family was out of sight. In this place was a smaller, naughtier grin that broke her sensual secrets. She rushed back into the house, the door banging as she burst into the kitchen and pulled out the salad she had hidden away. Setting it on the counter, Applejack rummaged through one of the cupboards before finally finding the silk tablecloth Granny Smith reserved for special holidays. Tossing it into the air, Applejack grinned as it settled neatly on the table before going over to one of the drawers and pulling out 2 long candles and a pair of crystal holders, which she set in the middle of the table and lit. Grabbing a couple of bowls, she added those to her setting before snatching 2 mugs and from her secret hiding spot behind the oats, a bottle of fine apple cider that she had managed to snag from last year's harvest. She was just about to give the salad a toss when she heard the door to her house creak open, and the sounds of dainty hooves tapped against the hardwood. Hello, Applejack, I just stopped to say hello, and Rarity blinked, taking in the sight before her, a grin slowly blossoming on her face. Well, 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 looks like someone has a special night planned. Maybe, Applejack said, suddenly very sly. Is it someone I know? The fashionista circled about the room, clicking her tongue in approval. Maybe, Applejack murmured, eyes shut and head down. She paused at the hardwood with her hoof. Rarity practically purred as she slowly made her way towards Applejack, forcing her chin up and making the farmer look her in the eye. Not that young stallion we saw the other day, I assume? Nah, he ain't my type, Applejack murmured. What about that nice celery seller? You know the one I mean. Not my type either. Well then, Applejack, who is your type? You, the farmer said, with a sense of modesty leaving her as she passionately pulled Rarity in a soul-searing kiss. The white unicorn moaned, her horn beginning to glow as she surrendered herself to the power of the kiss, their fierce embrace causing the very air around them to feel as if it was going to burst into flames. The meal was forgotten as the farmer dragged her lover to the floor, bringing her— What?! Mr. and Mrs. Cake gave a start, staring at Twilight with wide eyes as the unicorn stood there with her mouth hanging open to try and form a coherent sentence. You think Rarity and Applejack are in love with each other? Well, yes, of course, Miss Cake said, as casually as one would discuss the weather. I thought you knew. No, I didn't. What am I saying? Rarity and Applejack! And Twilight looked around, realizing she was getting some curious looks that quickly brought her voice to a whisper. Are not in love? Mr. Cake chuckled. Twilight should have to be blind not to see it. Say what? They're friends! Yes. Friends, Miss Cake said, air quoting. She casually gestured towards the two. Applejack was happily munching on an apple fritter, whilst Rarity was using her magic to daintily sip her tea, while averting her eyes from Applejack's vicious assault on manners and pastry. Look at them. See how they sit so far apart, neither of them touching, neither paying each other any attention. See how Rarity rolls her eyes and Applejack continues to focus on her food, rather than the mare in front of her. That is a sign of love. Love.